And I do believe healthcare is going to change. Maybe it's my optimism, but it's going to change. But in the meantime, I think nurses need support. Healthcare workers need support to move through this and take care of themselves.
Welcome to Nursing Beyond the Bedside. I'm Audrey, your host, and a nurse who pivoted my path several years ago. After 8 years as a critical care nurse, I was ready for change. I craved higher pay and more flexibility, but was struggling to find a clear path forward. Fast forward through positions in recruiting, customer success, and marketing, and many lessons learned along the way. Today, I run Pivot Path, a company dedicated to empowering nurses to redefine their careers. This podcast is designed to help you navigate the journey from clinical bedside nursing to a fulfilling career that aligns with your passions and goals. Here, you'll discover inspiring stories from nurses who've gone beyond the bedside, successfully transitioning to non-clinical roles, or redefining their nursing career. Join us as we hear their stories and share actionable strategies to help you make your own leap. Whether you're a new listener curious about what lies beyond the bedside, or a returning audience member in need of some fresh motivation, this podcast is your go-to resource for exploring new opportunities that can transform your career. Let's get started. Today, I'm happy to welcome Barbara Anderson, a registered nurse with over 40 years of experience across the continuum of healthcare. Barbara's journey has taken her from hospital settings to home care, insurance, and beyond, allowing her to develop a deep understanding of the challenges healthcare professionals face. As a certified executive and life coach, Barbara has founded Simply Harmony Coaching, where her mission is to support healthcare professionals in experiencing work-life harmony through holistic methods and spiritual practices. In this episode, Barbara shares her incredible journey, her passion for coaching, and practical tips for maintaining a growth mindset and achieving inner balance. Barbara, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Audrey. Really happy to be here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of good stuff to talk about in this conversation today. And I think with you, let's start with Simply Harmony Coaching, because I know that a lot of your nursing career is kind of wrapped up in that. So I think that will kind of naturally get us into the details of the path that your career has taken. For a lot of listeners, let's start basic. What is an executive and life coach?
Sure. Well, someone who supports another person, the coachee, in really figuring out their own challenges and steps to take to work towards their goals. Specifically for healthcare professionals and especially for nurses, it's how I see it is really holding this sacred, safe space where, you can talk through things, sort through things. A lot of times we just don't have that ability. You might have a friend or a mentor, but going beyond that is, some outside person who has this training and coaching to draw out, ask the right questions, allow you to figure things out yourself. And I totally believe we all have our own answers. But sometimes we need that support, and I've had support through my life, and I really enjoy providing that to others now.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you say that we all have our own answers, and we may just need a little bit of help pulling that out. I think that there's a lot of truth in that. How did you end up coaching? I know that your coaching has a lot of focus on healthcare professionals. Talk to me a little bit about how you landed on healthcare professionals as your audience.
Well, really, it's what I know and who I know. But I really want to, at this point in my career, serve the people who are out there, at the bedside and taking care of patients. And I feel privileged now to be able to support them in their role, take a look at their lives and what things can work better for them so that they can go out there and do the work and take care of others. And so it's very rewarding. It's so great to see the light bulb come on for someone, to see that path. And what I did is, I didn't end up here quickly. It was kind of a long path, but I encourage everybody to step their toe in the water and you start these ripple effects. And before you know it, here I am. So it's like for pivot pathing.
Yes, exactly. Well, so tell us a little bit about your long path. What are some of the twists and turns that your own career and life has taken?
I started in a nursing program in Ohio, and was in the hospital after that, after graduating for about 9 months. And my nursing roommates were tired of hearing me complain because it wasn't what I expected after training. I expected more time to work with each patient, and just, all of that was kind of lost in the nursing process. And it just wasn't my home. And I found home care nursing. I working for the public health department, and suddenly found that place for me. And I was in home care, although I did move to Hawaii, which was a great stint. I did home care in Hawaii as well. There I learned, you know how your life and your work intertwines, at least hopefully it does. And in Hawaii, I learned a lot about diversity and being relaxing, taking life more easily. There's a real spiritual component to living there as well. And then I divorced and raised 2 kids on my own. And that also, weaves your path of where you are. But I was in home care a long time. That was a great touching out point for everything else that I've done. Then I after divorcing, moved back to, not back, but new area of Seattle. And so I've stayed here since and have had some really great experiences here. One main pivot was to a health insurance company. And I was given this opportunity to help a hospital transition. It was at the time of HMOs. And so helping this hospital transition to working with an insurance company as part of their healthcare program as well. And I did that for a year and then got promoted by this wonderful manager I had at the time. And we've all had really good managers, and we've had some not so great. And we learned the most from both sides. But this woman was great. And I was able to have this dream job of managing different sites on the West Coast, so Nevada and California and other areas. I really enjoyed traveling. I kind of am a bigger picture person, so kind of dropping in and seeing how these folks are doing and then taking those ideas to another place and finding out what they were doing and then pulling them all together. And we were working remotely, so I was learning really early how to work remotely. And that was a great job until I got laid off. So I had the experience of being laid off. And the great challenge of that was I needed to lay off my team. And I knew my layoff was coming, although no one said it. And then I had to, be laid off myself. And then I decided, I think I know enough about health insurance. I'd rather go back to provider side of things. Got an opportunity to work in a clinic to manage the clinic setting. And what I would say, too, to people who are looking at pivoting, a lot of times there's opportunity because maybe it's a challenging job and a lot of people turn over, and maybe you're able to step in and do something more, something different. And, that's your opportunity to take it and run with it. And then, that takes you to your next place. After that, there have been different roles in between. I just really learned a lot about healthcare across the continuum, working with different folks. One other wonderful opportunity I had was director of care management at a hospital, and that brought me kind of back into the hospital. And I did that for a couple years. It was a really long commute, but I knew it was a great opportunity. I got my master's degree at that point, which opened new doors. That's the other education just opens doors for you. And because they liked really looking at the whole picture, I liked the idea of consulting. And so I took a role in care management and consulting and stayed in consulting for about 10 years. And that was also a great experience. What did I say? A lot of challenges. At one point, I was traveling from Seattle to New York City every week. That was for a whole year project. That was really challenging. And I learned a lot about how to take care of myself. The self-care came up because, when you have a schedule like that. But it was great because I got to meet a lot of people across the country, got to do what I love to do is bring, these ideas to another place and also share that around. It just broadens your whole experience in meeting all these different people from different places. And I traveled to almost every state and even had a 3-month gig in Canada, which was kind of cool. And what was very interesting, they have a different payment system, but the problems are the same. The issues are... So that was eye-opening.
Yeah, interesting. I know that last time we talked, we discussed having a growth mindset a lot. And as I'm hearing you talk about all of the different roles that you've taken on through your career, I mean, I know each one came with its own skill set and things that you needed to learn and adapt to. And I think that nurses, generally speaking, are pretty adaptable and flexible and like quick learners, which makes us really great candidates to pivot into new roles. But did you ever experience like any like hesitation with jumping into something new because maybe you didn't know something needed to do the job, or any imposter syndrome as you were navigating through different roles?
Every time. Every time. That it is the hardest part, getting started. But then you find, like, for instance, in consulting, there's a lot of project management. Nurses have so much of that skill around project management. Now, others may not recognize that or see that, but you know that, and that builds your confidence, and can't take what other people are saying or thinking. You're going to show them, and then you do. I would say that imposter syndrome is still there in positions when you start them, but you eventually learn. And it's funny because my personality is one where I'd like to, and I think all nurses are like this too. People's lives depend on it, so we like to feel like we know what we're doing and we have the skills and we have all the knowledge we need. But when you step into these different situations, you don't know it all. But that's also the fun part of it is, what will it learn? And it just, keeps feeding you, fed me. It feeds my soul that way to just, really have challenges that I can overcome, and you just grow so much with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, imposter syndrome is very real. And for anyone who's listening today that's not totally familiar, it's just kind of that feeling that you are doing something that like you're not necessarily qualified or able to do, even though in reality you probably are. And so, I think that that is something that just like is a bit of a mental hurdle to get over when you do step into something new. And Barbara, I think you're exactly right. Like as nurses, we are a highly reliable profession, and we are highly reliable because we hold ourselves to these like high standards, and we want to do everything correctly, and we want to know that what we're doing is correct. And, especially, I mean, you can speak more to this probably, but like in consulting, there's a bit more gray area. Like in nursing, we're used to everything being pretty black and white and like, this is right, this is wrong. But in the consulting space, and actually in a lot of jobs, just like outside of that, like bedside clinical position, there's a lot more room for creativity and for trial and error. And for, there's a little bit more of that like experimental mentality of like, like we can try this, we can see what the impact is. And of course, assessing that impact is key. But I think that that is a transition from the kind of black and white world that we work within as clinicians at the bedside, to transitioning to the business world and realizing that that margin for error is not quite as tight.
And that's funny. I have to laugh because I always tell my kids who did not go into healthcare that, they come with a problem that they have at work, and it's like, you're not going to kill anybody. Now, that isn't always true in healthcare with our errors, right? So, like you say, outside of the healthcare settings that we know at the bedside, that sort of thing, there is more forgivability. But the main thing is forgiving ourselves and giving ourselves, patience to learn things, patience to become that expert that we want to be. When we leave the bedside, maybe being this expert, very confident, and then you transition into a role and suddenly you're the newbie, or there's just so much to learn, but just embrace it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in all of your work through healthcare, all of the different roles that you worked in, I know that you observed a lot of challenges, especially like some of the frustrations faced by healthcare workers, and kind of got a deepening of your understanding of the need for like work-life balance. How does that play into how your coaching philosophy today?
Woohoo. Well, I do the traditional coaching style as I learned in coaching, but I also bring to the table a lot of experimenting I did myself to figure out my own self-care. needs and a lot of spiritual exploring. And I think a lot of nurses go along that route too, because we, from the get-go have to deal with life and death situations. And so we ask, what is the meaning of life? And so learning all these different ideas, being open to that, it helps you to really figure out what is right for you as far as self-care. And I encourage everyone to explore. And certainly I have a lot of ideas around that, but people really have to figure it out, what works for them. I read something recently where meditation isn't for everybody. It actually makes some people really more anxious. And so, okay, meditation may not be for you. So, what will work? Find it, because I've been in different situations myself. For instance, traveling and all the hectic and requirements that are necessary for that role. Then have to take a look at, okay, I really need to take care of myself in a better way. And so how can I do that? And helping also, there's a lot of things going on in the world that can make us so anxious. There's a lot of uncertainty right now. And so I just, even more so, we need to take care of ourselves, find what we can do to improve our own internal levels of confidence, of connection, of feeding our soul kind of thing.
Absolutely. And I know you mentioned something really key that I want to touch on, and that is the environment that healthcare professionals, nurses in particular, work in. I mean, right from the get-go, we graduate nursing school and we are thrown into this environment where we face, whether it's our own stress or a patient's stress or their family's stress, like we are in a stressful, fast-paced, high-pressure environment right from the start, where we are dealing with things like death and trauma and just, things that other professionals would never encounter in their day-to-day work life. And I've talked to so many nurses, and I agree with this, that feel like from the beginning of our career, we're not necessarily prepared for that well, I don't think. Like, I know that myself personally, I worked pediatric ER and critical care from day one, and I experienced burnout, but I don't even think that I realized how burnt out I was until I was looking back, like, retrospectively. Um, and so, yeah, I wish that, I had had someone like you to come in and kind of teach me about managing stress and maintaining balance, because it's hard to show up and be the nurse that you want to be every day when you yourself are like feeling stressed and anxious. And like, then on top of that, you need to be able to handle the stress and anxiety of your patient and their family.
Right. Yeah. And, and I think too, we have to look at our person. If we're going to do that work and, we're really good at it and it feels good to us in a lot of ways, then we have to look at our whole life too. Like, how are we showing up for other people? Are we helping others too much? Can we, shore up our own boundaries so that we are able to help others appropriately? For instance, are there adults that we're helping who really need to figure out their own lessons kind of thing? Because as nurses, we can get into that mode kind of quickly. So being sure that we have our boundaries. And the other thing is we get wrapped up in what we can't control, all of the issues around healthcare now and decisions that are made by top level management who don't really understand what's happening at the, unit level. And then, even if they do understand, there's still all these other factors they have to have a bottom line to keep the hospital open kind of thing. So making sure that you're really saying, okay, I can't control that. I'm not going to focus on it, not going to worry about it. Focus on what I can control. And that alone helps you find a better peace about things because, just always check it against, do I have control over this?
That's a good thing to measure against. What do I have control of and what do I do? What do I not? That's a really good takeaway. I know that, self-care, practicing gratitude, like kind of maintaining your inner peace is all very important and very core to what you coach. If there are nurses who are listening today and feel burnt out or feel like they're a bit out of balance. I love the takeaway of checking in with what you can control and what you can't, and like kind of setting your own boundaries where you might be like giving too much in some areas. Are there any other tidbits that you would share that might help someone in that situation?
A really big one is reflection because, when we're really busy, we don't take time for that. And it's so important in our life to stop, pause, go within, take some time to think about, what do you really want? Take a look at your core values. Some people they go through life and don't figure out what their core values are, because every decision you make, you can compare it against your core values. And this is great when you're pivoting. Knowing exactly what you want in values, will this new position match that for you? And you're not going to always know, and you're not going to, you're still going to take risks, but it might help you prevent having exactly what's happening here in your role to taking it with you in another role. And that's why I think too is taking time and pausing before you pivot is really important to make sure what you really want. But again, stepping your toe in the water, like talking with someone who's in that role, just taking baby steps. That's what I say a lot in coaching is, those small steps that help you get to that big goal that you have. And we have so much internal power that we're not aware of. And when we open to that, it's just amazing what we can accomplish, make the impossible possible. And nurses have a lot of the groundwork for that. And so if you can just take it that little farther and really get connecting with yourself, it's just amazing what can happen.
And you're so right that life is busy, and a lot of people like don't take that time to slow down and really get to know themselves and assess their values. That was something I worked with a career coach when I was going through my own career pivot, and it was it was such a good exercise for me to sit down and assess my values. And he walked me through, some exercises to really get down to what those values are. And I think that that is so essential. And that's something that I like encourage through Pivot Path as well, because if you don't know that, then like you're kind of moving blind. Like if you can identify your values and your priorities in that chapter of your life, then that can kind of serve as your roadmap to the decisions that you make from that point. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. And that paired with the growth mindset of just being open to new challenges too, I think is really a key to success in a career pivot.
Oh, one more thing I want to stress, and I've studied a lot of this about energy. And we have a limited amount, and we need to put some of that to ourselves. And I would say start there, and it's not a selfish thing, it's a self-preservation thing. And so, looking at what drains you and what energizes you, and do more of that energizing thing. And so I'll walk people through exercises too, to understand that for themselves. And I've been trained in body code to do some energy work, because it just works so well for me. And feng shui as well, your environment and all that. There's so much more to life when you explore these kind of things, and it can help your life improve in so many ways and help others.
I'm actually glad that that's where you went with the conversation, because the next thing I was going to ask you is more about, I wanted to go a little bit deeper with your holistic methods and energy systems and kind of spiritual practices that kind of are underlaying in your coaching. Can you explain a little bit about just like the basic concept of energy and like kind of how you coach around that?
You? Well, energy is everything. And it doesn't ever die. So what we put energy into is good, because it'll multiply, and a lot of times we have more energy when we're working with other people, that we combine our energies and we can get closer to goals together, working together. But it's a lot about doing these different exercises and uplifting your own energy, like having more joy in your life, for instance. It's more about positive psychology versus, focusing on the negative. And there's a saying that where your intention goes, energy flows. And so, what are you focusing on? And that's where I try to help others think that through. What are you focusing on, and can you move that to what would, improve your life in a better way? And we get stuck. We get stuck sometimes, and I think that's where coaching can really help too. Is to, okay, how can we move this needle? And coaching is so individual too, around energy and what works for one doesn't work for another, and so it's a very customized thing, customized discussions, and then an individual path and plan to go forward with that.
Definitely. When a new client comes to work with you, what does that path with them usually look like? Are they generally coming to you with like a specific problem to overcome or something to achieve, or are they coming to you with a more vague, request, and you guys are kind of sorting that out together?
It's all of the above, Audrey. It could be any of that. Some are really goal achievers and they want some support in reaching that goal. Others do just need the help sorting out. And so we'll, start with some assessments that are appropriate to them. Some might just need, they don't know. So they just need to talk it out. And together we can figure that out. What might be one step that they could take to move. And, when you're burned out, and I've been as well, you just feel stuck and you don't know sometimes what to do as the next step because you're in this, you feel like a hamster on a wheel because you can't get off of it. So sometimes you just need to talk it through with someone who can help you find out some small steps that you can take and start moving out of it.
Yeah. I think that is one of the reasons that it's so great that you are bringing your nursing background and experience to this role and working with healthcare workers specifically, because I think that we work in an environment that is really difficult, if not impossible, to fully understand if you've never worked in it. Like people have an idea of what they think like a nurse does every day, and like they're probably pretty much right. But it's like hard to imagine that they can really understand all of the nuances and emotion and like everything that is involved in the experience of being a nurse. So I can imagine, like if a nurse were to come and like work with you as a coach, that perspective that you could bring to the conversation, I think is so huge. That's something that like when I'm working with nurses through Pivot Path, like I feel like I'm uniquely positioned to help them, rewrite their resume or figure out how they're going to pivot and like communicate their value, because I know what it means to be a nurse working on a med surg unit or in the ER, and like what skills are developed there. In the same way, I can only imagine like the value of your input in these coaching conversations of having been a nurse and understanding healthcare and understanding the pressures and even how those pressures and stresses can like overflow into, your personal life even after you've clocked out for the day.
Yeah. And imagine having your own, and we do have our own challenges personally to also deal with. And so how do you do all that? And it's so true what you say. It's trying to do the impossible. But that's where we're at right now. And I do believe healthcare is going to change. Maybe it's my optimism, but it's going to change. But in the meantime, I think nurses need support. Healthcare workers need support to move through this and take care of themselves.
Yeah. I love seeing the translation of your appreciation for working like one-on-one with patients. Like at the beginning of the call, you mentioned that you didn't necessarily feel like within the walls of a hospital, like you had the time and attention to like give to the patients that you wanted to. And that's, kind of why home health was a better fit for you. And now, the nurses have become the patients in a sense. So it's really cool that you were able to identify that that's what you really liked in your nursing career and, continue to have that evolve over time.
Mm-hmm. And it was really interesting, Audrey, that I've always felt that coaching was where I wanted to move to, not always, but in the last few years of my career prior to this. And I signed up for coaching and to take it as a training. And it was really neat because it was a program that had PhDs and master's level people. Many of them were counselors, psychologists. I was the only nurse. Military leaders as well were in that class. And it was like I'd come home. And that's when you love that feeling when you find, it was about the interaction of one-on-one that, I just thrive on, providing that space, allowing people to really find themselves. And like we said before, find their own answers. And like it's funny to say, but when I found home care, that was home. When I found the role in consulting at first was also home. But as we move through our careers, home changes and we change, and the roles, the environments we're in change. And so being open to, okay, that was home then, but to find, something like we're talking about here, that connection with people, and that I really like that role, to find that kind of along the way is fabulous. And that's the thing too, is like trust that it's going to work out. When I look back on my career, I had no plans to be here now, but it just moved wonderfully by allowing the universe, working with the universe, because something about, it's already planned, it's already known, and it's so exciting to connect with it and kind of flow with it. And then again, I couldn't have figured out a better path. And for each person, it's so individual.
Absolutely. And, what you just touched on comes up a lot in these podcast conversations, which I think it's great that it's a recurring theme that, nurses who have found a non-traditional path can kind of share back, like be open to opportunity. Like being a nurse doesn't always doesn't need to mean that you're going to be a nurse working hands-on at the bedside with patients for your entire career. As your life shifts and changes in different life chapters, it's more important for you to optimize for other things in your life, find other ways to follow your passion that, you bring to your nursing career and just kind of see where that leads you. We're very versatile professionals. We have lots of skills that we can take with us down many different paths.
Agree. That's really important message to pass along, because and I can't imagine another career that allows you the stepping stones that nursing does.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so when you're growing your own coaching business, I know that we talked some about networking and like using LinkedIn for making connections. Let's talk about that a little bit, because LinkedIn, networking, like that's not something that as bedside nurses we really have to use, but networking is so key when you're doing something away from the bedside. Um, how did you start networking and making new connections?
Well, I have to be honest that networking has never been my thing. I always thought of it as, and I've been in different roles where that was important too. So I always had to push myself to do networking, and I thought it was kind of fake or, not genuine. But what I come to realize more and more is I'm offering something and others have things to offer too. We want to help each other. And that's how I look at it now. And it does make the difference. And I have never been on social media before. I just chose to either have my kids. We just didn't want to go there. But I went there for this. I mean, I've been on LinkedIn, but not active at all. And I'll see a lot of nurses who, really are just not active. And I get that when you're working for someone else too, that it isn't always, the thing to be posting and all that. But when you have your own business, you do want to put yourself out there and let people get to know you. And so it's been amazing because I've made great connections and even collaborating with another nurse. And that's how I met you, Audrey. And it's just been amazing. And I also like writing, and it's allowed me to have a platform to be able to stretch that skill and see where that will take me as well. And I'm an introvert by nature, so it's interesting to keep challenging myself in that way. But I would just say you keep learning and growing. I remember that my mom at my age had just learned how to do email. Now, in my age, I'm learning LinkedIn and social media.
Yeah, that's funny. But it is, I mean, it's so true. Like you understand, you come to, especially as a business owner, like you come to understand the importance of building your personal brand and, what are you, how are you presenting yourself to the rest of the world? Like what are you an expert on? Like what are your like hot topics that you really like to talk about that show up in your content again and again? And, LinkedIn is such a powerhouse of a social media platform to be able to get on there and connect and truly network with other people. And, I had to learn about networking too. And it's really, I had overcomplicated it in my mind. I was like, I don't really understand it. Like it, maybe like you, I thought it was a little bit like superficial, just like kind of chit chatting with people. But then I came to realize and understand like you're establishing a connection with someone and you both kind of have each other's professional interests in mind. And it is a like give and take relationship. Like, you want to be able to help that person out down the road and you want to come to mind for them if like they see an opportunity that looks like something that's right up your alley come down the road. And so it does end up being really key and just opening up some additional doors. I mean, you and I wouldn't be here chatting today if it wasn't for LinkedIn. So, but yeah, building up that LinkedIn profile and building your personal brand on there is important. Especially I think, building your own company, but also I think if you're looking to make a career pivot, and just break out of something that you have been doing to try something new.
Yes, and it is, there are boundaries, of course, within the platform around, communicating and it's very professional and that sort of thing, which is great. But still, try to be your unique self because everybody's unique personality and skills and talents are needed in this world. And just, put it out there.
Yes, definitely. Well, Barbara, what advice do you think that you would give to nurses listening today who might be considering a pivot in their path? What key takeaways do you have for them?
Well, I like to say that it isn't always that you have to move from your position. If you just change your perspective and make some tweaks, it might still be the place you want to be. But at the same time, try, the areas that you're thinking about. I'd still do the work to know exactly what your values are and where you can find your passion. But then stepping your toe in and like maybe talking with someone who's in that role or doing even a side hustle. There's a lot of side hustle these days. I've got to say, though, when I was burned out, there's no way I could add another thing to my plate to try to market any Leo. But there's lots, nurses are multitaskers, but I'd say a lot of young folks today are even greater at multitasking. But yeah, the advice is to check it out in small ways to see, what might work for you. And then, and being open. And sometimes what it means is looking through all the jobs that there are out there for nurses, and apply for some and see where it takes you. I've learned so much in interviews, about myself and about what's out there. And, that was a great learning as well. And not a lot of reviews.
Hey, it's good practice. You get to practice answering the questions. You get to practice your own kind of elevator pitch on yourself. An interview is never wasted time in my mind.
I agree.
Awesome. Well, Barbara, I know that you have a free monthly newsletter, Banish Burnout Briefs. What exactly is that? What is that nurses can get to their inbox?
Yeah, that's tips and tricks around, self-care and finding joy and other tips around what we've talked about today. A lot around energy and how you can deal with that. And there's always a meditation or an activity to do to kind of bring it home. Yeah, it's funny I've called it briefs, but they're usually not very brief.
Barbara is taking applications for group coaching sessions at her website at simplyharmonycoaching.com. These group sessions can be 6 times the energy of one-on-one coaching and less cost. All you need to do is go to Let's Chat section of her website and fill out the form to express your interest. While there, you can also sign up for her Banish Burnout Briefs free monthly newsletter to your inbox. If you'd like to connect with Barbara after today's show, you can email her at barbaraanderson@simplyharmonycoaching.com or connect with her on LinkedIn. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to hit subscribe to keep up with our latest episodes. And if you were inspired by today's conversation, I hope you'll share this episode with someone who'd love it just as much as you did. If you're ready to pivot your path, visit the job board at jobs.mypivotpath.com. And if you have any questions or just want to say hi, feel free to email me at audrey@mypivotpath.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.